Lupus LA would like to thank our generous sponsors for their support of the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Emerge Business Solutions serves as a personal and professional CFO for clients across a wide spectrum of industries. They handle financial affairs with integrity and transparency. Gemini Beauty believes in beauty for a cause, and in their case, the cause is lupus. The team at Gemini is changing the skincare game for good. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, and as always, at the top of the show, I want to thank our sponsors for helping us make this show happen. Today, my guest is an old friend, and I'm so excited to be interviewing you today. Please welcome Cara Dellaverson. Cara is the Executive VP of Drama Programming at NBCUniversal, which means she gets to pick what shows you all get to watch, which I think is really cool. And you have we're going to talk a lot today about the entertainment industry and how lupus has affected your journey throughout the entertainment industry. So welcome to the show, Cara.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. So tell me, I know you were diagnosed in college. I always like to start with, where were you in your life before the lupus diagnosis, and what were your sort of hopes and dreams, and where were you headed?
I was a sophomore in college at the school that I had dreamt of going to and had, gotten accepted off the wait list. So was very happy to be there and was living my best life, friends, full, course load, really enjoying everything, probably pushing it in terms of, doing all of the classes, all of the homework, and all of the socializing I possibly could. But I was, I think a typical happy college kid.
You'd already had it your freshman year. So this was sophomore year. You were a little bit more adjusted. What happens to sort of say, something, something's messing up my best life? Yes.
Yes. So I think, as can be typical, I got pretty sick. I got a virus that was going around school that took me down for a couple weeks, fever, sore throat, like the whole usual thing. And then I really couldn't get better. I was having, a cough that wouldn't go away. I was having shortness of breath and fatigue and achiness. And, I was concerned because it felt like it was more serious than, your typical virus, enough so that I went to student health, which,
you never know.
And, they gave me some follow-up medication, but, time went by and it was still the same. Like, I was trying to manage school and life, and I still, could not get better. So I ended up back in the emergency room of the hospital, next to my college several times looking for answers. And as I think is quite typical, wasn't getting, a ton of good information. That was sort of the beginning of the very long process.
Right. And so what's the next step when you realize, okay, the emergency room visits aren't delving deep enough? Did you stay at school? Did you tell me that next step?
The next part. So that was kind of a journey. I went home at one point. I saw doctors in my hometown, which is LA, with my family. And still, there was a lot of symptoms and some strange things showing up on tests, but nothing super conclusive. And I was getting a lot of, scary sounding possible diagnoses from various doctors. So, throwing out scary, like maybe it's cancer, maybe it's pulmonary hypertension, some things that were more dismissive, like maybe you're anxious, maybe you're, a busy college kid and you have panic attacks, like people trying to come up with answers to what could be causing all of the symptoms. And
what were your main symptoms at that point? Like, what was the part that lingered?
So I had this incredible chest pain, which is, I think, why people were saying the, anxiety panic attack disorder. I had shortness of breath. I had heart palpitations. I had chest pain. I had fatigue and headaches. And at one point when I went on vacation this is over the course of a year, I got the sort of more traditional rash, which was finally, sort of one component of doctors finally starting to think like, oh, maybe this is another piece of a puzzle. But honestly, it took until I went to a psychiatrist, because I was literally investigating every single possible diagnosis that had been mentioned. So even though I was quite certain I was not having panic attacks, I was like, I'm open to anything that it could be the answer. And it was actually the psychiatrist who said, I think you need to see a rheumatologist based on all of the symptoms that you're explaining. And this was finally like because the rheumatologist was finally the person, Dr. Rinaldi, who put all of the pieces together, the symptoms, the rashes, the fatigue, the lingering chest pain. And then I actually started to get some real answers and some real specialists who could investigate some of the symptoms more deeply. But this probably took a year.
I love when a non-traditional doctor figures out the rheumatology part, because I feel like the last 20 years,
by the way,
100%.
All of the other doctors had not thought to send me to a rheumatologist. And this is many, many doctors that had not thought of that idea.
And I'm hoping that we've been changing that. A lot of the work we're centered around is really changing that conversation for all doctors to think autoimmune earlier in the process.
Yes.
It seems to be, the people that I've interviewed lately or spoken to lately that have been diagnosed in the last few years have had a shorter diagnosis process.
I'm so glad to hear that, because it was totally terrifying. And it was also super frustrating. And honestly, it did feel like all of the doctors I went to were really focused on their particular, if I was explaining the chest symptom, I was sent to, a cardiologist or a pulmonologist. And they were all doing, the best they could in terms of the exact thing I was explaining. But in terms of the holistic, like, what could all of these things together, really mean? It took a while before somebody really thought about it that way, and then ran the right blood tests and, sort of went down the autoimmune road. And that is when I finally got, the diagnosis.
So give me the emotion there. Is it relief and then fear? Is it fear then relief? Is it where I know those two emotions are in there. I'm sure.
Adam.
Right.
So first I was a college kid. And I was being told, your lifestyle has to change. You might not be able to finish school. You might not be able to have a full-time job. Who knows what this means in terms of your long-term health? Like, you absolutely shouldn't be overextended, shouldn't be drinking, shouldn't be up late, shouldn't be stressed out. And I was like, so, I go to college, right? So It was, I was very scared, and I was, though, a little relieved, because honestly, the not knowing, the anxiety around, like, I am so sure something is wrong with me, and nobody believes me, but nobody really knows what to make of it. And so, my fear was it was getting worse, and, nobody could really help me. So just the idea that there was an actual diagnosis and a plan and a path did give me a lot of relief, but it was a huge transition, lifestyle wise and sort of acceptance wise, at that age. And I was living on the other side of the country, for my family. So I decided I did want to go back to school, but I was far away from home and trying to figure out.
I also think weather is an interesting conversation. Weather always, especially when you're, as a East Coaster now living in California, those winters on the East Coast they're tough.
I was not prepared for that, lupus or not, by the way.
Right, exactly. So, me neither. And I grew up there, but I went to Ithaca College, which is like,
that's freezing cold. Okay, so
it's just the worst weather, and so. But you realize your body does react to the weather and the humidity and so. Even
now, as soon as the barometer drops and the weather changes, I'm like, oh boy, I'm going to feel this. Mm-hmm. So yes,
100%.
And just the, trying to get out of bed to go to class and to, do my work, forget about, trying to have the normal social life of a, 19-year-old, especially because my friends did not really understand. I don't think they had ever even heard of lupus. Never mind, knew what to do or what to think about it. So it was definitely very lonely at first and scary.
Did you go back to college and tell a lot of people, or was it?
I went back and told my
quiet?
close friends. Yeah, I told my close friends at first, and then it took a while before I felt comfortable, just sort of sharing that with everyone. Eventually, though, while I was in school, I did, want to do something in terms of, awareness and fundraising. So the social organization I was a part of, we did fundraising for lupus for my junior and senior year. So eventually I did come into wanting to really be an advocate and to educating people. But at first I was definitely unsure about how to explain it.
And I know your family, because I know your family is such an important part of your experience and wellness. How did that play a part in sort of the diagnosis and initial treatment stages?
Was a lot of them being very frustrated with doctors, which on one hand is so nice to have people that love and support you, but is also hard because if you yourself are struggling and are scared, and then you see the people that are close to you that love you who are also feeling that way, it's like you're carrying that emotion too. You want this problem to be addressed or figured out for yourself, but also, for the people around you who love you and care about you and are like, what is going on? So they were, super helpful in terms of supporting me and, making sure that I was seeing people and not giving up on trying to find answers. But it was also, it was hard because I could feel their concern. And, that was scaring me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and now I think this is many years ago. Now, we have more of a ease about this, but they still, if I'm not feeling great and they think I'm not doing the best job of taking care of myself, they will be very noisy.
Well, now we're going to talk about this a little later on, but the stress of your career and your job,
yes,
I'm sure plays a big part of that conversation.
Indeed.
Yeah, but we'll talk about that later. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's take a quick break, and then I want to talk about sort of your evolution through the entertainment industry and what you sort of wanted to do and how you morphed the lupus diagnosis into what has become, a stellar career and all of that fun stuff. So we will be right back to talk more to Cara.
Lupus LA's fellowship program is an essential part of ensuring the training of future rheumatologists. The nation is experiencing a serious shortage of pediatric rheumatologists. Today, there are approximately 300,000 children diagnosed with rheumatic conditions in the United States, but only about 250 practicing pediatric rheumatologists to meet this tremendous need. Call 310-657-5667 or visit our website at lupusla.org to support the efforts of Lupus LA.
Welcome back to the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. I'm Adam Selkowitz talking to Cara Dellaverson. And when we took our break, we were going to talk about your evolution in the entertainment industry. So tell me a little bit about, I know you have a real love and, have always wanted to be a part of the entertainment industry. So tell me kind of the evolution of your early career and how the lupus played a part in forming that.
Sure. So yes, as you said, I think, even from when I was growing up, I always wanted to do something in the entertainment business. I wasn't exactly sure what, but, from an early age, I was sort of interning and working as a production assistant. So I could sort of dip my toe in and see what part of the business I was most interested in. And the thing that was very clear, even early on, was almost any direction I wanted to take, it was going to be a big time commitment. So when I first, got the diagnosis and I was going through college and sort of looking to that next step, I absolutely was concerned about my ability to, make a commitment to a full-time job. Like that was sort of the issue is I would, even when I was, at school or interning, I would get sick and I would have to, stay home. I would have to rest. I would have to take it easy. I would have to pull back on like going gung ho. And that was always the issue is like, my parents, my friends, mentors in the business always asked me from the very beginning, like, do you think that it's realistic that you can do this? Like, do you think it's the best thing for your health, the best thing for your lifestyle? It's, these jobs are like 24/7. It means you could be working on the weekends. You could be working later at night. So it was very challenging because on one hand, it was what I had always wanted to do. That was my dream jobs, sort of included being on set or working with writers or directors or being sort of in the middle of the creative process. And those things don't really stop if you don't feel great. I, definitely spent a couple of years back and forth on if this made the most sense. Like I continued to do it, but I struggled a lot, certainly. And I struggled a lot about, do I tell the people around me so that they could maybe be supportive and pick up the slack when, I'm not feeling well, or do I not tell anybody because then they're going to think that I, maybe I'm not going to be as reliable if I'm not healthy all the time. Like this was a big concern of mine.
That was my next question, was sort of at what stage of your career did you sort of go into a new job or new relationship and mention it?
Yeah, it took a while, honestly. Like in my early 20s, the jobs I had then, I really did not. I tried to, go into the jobs. And if I got sick, I just, said that I wasn't feeling well, or, honestly, I tried to push myself through for better or worse, which is not this diagnosis is sort of a constant negotiation with your body, as you know. So it's this like, can we together decide we're going to get through this? Or am I going to push you too far? And are you going to say like, it's too much and sort of, give out on me? And there was a lot of back and forth on that and trying to explain to, potential relationship partners, like, what might that mean? Could I have kids? Was I going to be like in and out of doctor's offices for my whole relationship? Like these were big, sort of scary questions. Always, I guess. It's not like it's done now, but I think when you're getting used to the diagnosis, it's maybe a little bit more challenging, but that was absolutely the reality.
And what did you find was the reaction when you did start to tell your bosses and things like that? Was it different than what you anticipated?
I would say yes, both good and bad, honestly. I think it's so much better now, thanks in part to like this organization and you and, just the general awareness. But I would say this is 20 years ago. And a lot of people did not know what lupus was. And B, if they did look it up, the outcomes or the explanation could be very scary sounding. So I definitely got a lot of like, that's terrible. Like I'm so sorry. Like it was very like, I had told them I was dying. Like that was the reaction. And then also I got a lot of the typical, you don't look sick. Like you're too young to be sick. You come to work, you have a full-time job. Like, and in relationships, it was like, so you don't want to like go out tonight? Is that because you just don't want to go out with me, or you really don't feel well? Like everybody is so questioning sort of the validity, I think, of, how you feel on a day-to-day basis until they, know you or know it better. And that was especially true when I was younger. I mean, I think I really had a hard time making people believe me that, the symptoms, and they changed a lot too. So I've had like very different sort of manifestations of the lupus. And so, that was confusing to people too. Like, oh, I thought your thing was that you had like, chest pain, arthritis, and now like you're having stomach problems. Like they always thought that was suspicious. Like
Right,
it
right, right, right.
changes so
Like
much.
you're using it to get out of something or,
Totally.
um,
Totally. And from childhood, like my jam has been that I'm like, I do all my homework. I show up on time. I go to class. Like I'm that kind of person. So it was very hard for me to have people think that I was using like my health or my diagnosis as an excuse for something.
let's tell everybody a little bit about what your job entails now. And
Yeah.
sort of, because I love this sort of the idea of a day in the life. And I know no day is typical. I mean, today we're recording this the day after the writer's strike has ended. I am sure
Wild.
your
Yeah.
phone is blowing up.
Yes.
But I'm very interested in kind of what your typical day is like, what it's supposed to be like, and then what are your tricks? I know, you have
Yeah.
a lot of sort of tips and tricks for people to cope, because my sense is, I've always had this sense that there are a lot of type A lupus patients in the world.
Yeah.
And, I think part of actually the success of dealing with the illness is to continue doing what they love to do and being type A. But I think there are ways, that people can do that successfully, which I think you've done. So I know that was 20 questions in a row, but yes,
Yes. Sometimes. Yes. Okay. So just in terms of the day to day, or what does my professional life look like? So my job is, just to give a little context, is we hear, my team and this group here hears the pitches from writers and producers about what they think / hope the next great drama show would be for NBC or for Peacock. And they come in and we probably hear, when we're busy, 4 to 5 pitches a day from various writers and producers. Over the course of a year, it can be anywhere between 300 and 400. And then from that batch of ideas, we commission scripts for about 40 projects on the NBC side, and then, maybe slightly more than that on the Peacock side. And over the course of the year, the writers turn in the scripts, we give notes, we give feedback, and then a handful of those projects move on to be produced, and then you watch them on TV or on Peacock. And then through that process, we sort of, oversee the episodes that are coming in that are produced and giving feedback on those, and then making sure that they get on air looking, as good and polished and perfect as possible. So it's basically like from the germ of an idea to the time you watch it on TV, we are part of that process for the 1 hours or the dramas. And because the volume is pretty meaningful, it basically means, like, I said earlier, a full-time, starts first thing in the morning, reading emails before bed, working on the weekends pretty regularly. So it is a, probably 70% of my time is in some way related to work, which is a lot.
And I'll add the part that I think is always impressive is how much you have to read, how much homework you have to do.
Yes. Lots
on top of that, because all of these scripts go through, half a dozen drafts at least. And, each one you have to give feedback on and notes, and, you can't be unprepared to do your job.
True. Good. Luckily, I love to read. I always have. So I think it's less of a burden than it could potentially be otherwise. But yes, it is, it takes a lot of sort of dedication and focus and enthusiasm, honestly, to be able to do, this amount of work with this amount of time dedicated to it, certainly. And I think to your earlier question, it is a constant negotiation, I think, between me and me about what, is doable, what is pushing too much, what is endangering, potentially my health, and what is, an appropriate amount of work or focus dedicated to this. And I think I don't always get it right, for sure. I push myself, sometimes too much, and then feel the effects of that. But I think what I have tried to get better at, and this, as I've gotten older and as lupus has taught me some lessons when I don't listen, is one, to listen, because I think honestly, like now I feel like I really am attuned to my body and to my symptoms and to, what my body is telling me. And I think honestly, people who have this diagnosis or anything autoimmune, better than anyone else can tell you. Like it just is true. And you sense it before it maybe shows up. And I think it's the immediate reaction to that and course correcting that helps mitigate, some of the harder things that I probably didn't do when I was younger and then would get a serious flare. So it's the pull back when you feel it. It's like, you have to rest. You have to bring your stress level down. You have to let other people do some things for you. You have to allow for some support, which took me a long time to do also. Like, I didn't want to say, like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I have to cancel this. I have to not go out tonight. I have to say no, like, but you do if your body is telling you do. And I think on top of that, whatever else could work for you to bring that, stress level down, whether it's like, I do really like yoga. Do I do as much as I want to or should? No. Like, I absolutely like see and feel the value of meditating. At one point I went to a, sort of a guided imagery hypnotherapist specialist that was really teaching me how to try to make a mind body connection to bring, some of the stress and inflammation down, which sounds really woo woo, but I could feel the effect of, taking that 10 or 15 minutes to just try to like take it down a notch. Like I could feel my body, physically relaxing. And, I've tried pretty much all of the things in terms of, when it gets really bad, I make adjustments to my diet. Anti-inflammatory diets have really worked for me. Like some people don't feel like it's, for them to have restrictive diets. And again, should I do it more? Probably. But the times I have done it, it has made a really noticeable difference. So I feel like there are things that you have to experiment with and like, tools that you might need to find the ones that you like, but that have over time that I have tried have helped me like enough so that when I get into a spot, I'm like, I can employ all of my tactics and, try to mitigate like some of what is overwhelming my body.
I think that's all such good advice. And I think, given the craziness of your job, I think it applies to so many other professions. And I do think recognizing, okay, I'm at the start of something.
Yeah.
I gotta stop it. Yeah. I'm a big believer in meditation too. I think that's especially when it comes to the heart and to palpitations and anxiety and stress. And 'cause I think it's like a vicious cycle that the anxiety and the stress leads to other symptoms. And then you get stressed about those 100%. Symptoms. And that's a big part of it. Tell me, I'm interested because I know, we have so many amazing entertainment professionals, women on our board and in our sort of greater Lupus LA community.
Yes.
We do. So tell me a little bit about some of these mentors, friends, other women in the business. And there are some men too. I consider myself one of them, but I know tell me a little bit about those connections and what that has done to sort of your lupus network.
Absolutely. I mean, I think first of all, just to go back, like a ways back, when I first was diagnosed, I honestly did not know one single other person that had lupus, and nor had I ever like heard of any. It was completely new to me. And so when I first met Marissa, who you've also interviewed on this podcast.
Yes. Now the current co-chair of the board of Lupus LA.
Yes. She is an amazing lady. But when I first met her, we're the same age and we work in the business, and it was completely miraculous to me to have somebody that was experiencing sort of going through something similar And we were introduced by a friend in common, and we, I think connected so quickly over, what it feels like to have this diagnosis, to be trying to, sort of work on your career, work on your life, like find a partner, decide if you want to have kids. It was like an enormous relief. And then from there, I've expanded my community, but she has been amazing. And then honestly, my boss that I have worked for here at NBCUniversal for the last 8 years, she doesn't have lupus, but she has been such an understanding, like incredible boss and mentor. So just having somebody that you would look up to and that, you would ask for advice and you would emulate in the profession that you're working in is incredible, but also to have them be super sensitive and supportive. She's come to, all of the Lupus LA events that I have invited her to. She's, contributed. She's been here for me when I haven't felt well. Like having people that you can lean on and that, understand what you're going through and that can also be part of your professional and personal life is so incredibly necessary and helpful and supportive. I mean, it's hard just to do anything alone, professionally or personally, but like having people who really, really understand the specific challenges of this, you know what I mean? So even if you look okay, but you say like, I really don't feel well, I got to go home, and have it be okay is, I know is not a luxury that everybody has. And I certainly have not had always, but when you can build that and have that, it's so helpful and supportive.
Fantastic.
And then my family obviously does that for me and my boyfriend on my personal side. But so if you have it on, both sides, that's ideal. I feel very lucky.
Yes, definitely the key to success. I agree with you. Tell me we're going to wrap up, but tell me, the last question I have for you is, so I'm a lupus patient sitting at home, really wanting to be in this crazy entertainment field, but I'm scared. What do you say to that person who's trying to decide, like, do I give this my go, especially starting sort of, at the bottom? What do you say?
Yeah. I would say 100% yes. I think anything, that you're passionate about, that you're enthusiastic about, that gives you, that feeds you, that makes you excited, like that's going to help you from a health standpoint and just from a life standpoint, I think. So if this business is what makes you feel that way, like you should absolutely go for it. I think you have to navigate your particular challenges, health-wise, but I think if you find something that you love doing, trying to do it and trying to find a way to manage your, your health while doing it is absolutely the path over not ever trying. You know what I mean? I just feel like the enthusiasm and the love of something overcomes a lot of the, challenges that an autoimmune diagnosis can give you. And I think a lot of the autoimmune, I mean, I know this is a big conversation, but for me, so I'll just talk about it for me. It is very connected to my lupus is very connected to my mental health and my anxiety and my sort of state of mind. So like the more, enthusiastic, happy, sort of stimulated I am, like the easier it is to manage my lupus. So I think I would always say 100% try, because if this is a place that you want to be working, then I think without question, it's worth it to try to pursue whatever makes you happy, regardless of the lupus.
I think that was so well said. Really, really great. And I lied. I have one more question. So you have, all right, you're a lupus patient. You have one of those days where you need to rest. You need to be at home. Tell me the show to binge watch, or the upcoming show, upcoming show that you don't want to miss.
Okay,
we're going to give NBCU a big plug.
I know, I was
going to
say, is
a
this
big
the
opportunity
part where I
with a massive audience. Right, 100%.
I shamelessly plug my own shows? Or
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then I would say on the Peacock side, Soapy Mystery coming called Apples Never Fall with Annette Bening. That's based on a Leanne Moriarty book. So if you liked, any of the stuff that has been dramatized of hers, 9 Perfect Strangers, Big Little Lies, it's of that ilk. It's like a
Perfect.
Juicy, sexy family mystery, which is like my kind of show all the time. So if you were going to ask me, like, what do I want to watch when I'm in bed and don't feel well, it would be that, or like maybe some reality. Don't tell anyone because I don't work in reality.
I hear you.
And then on the NBC side, I would say that our 2 new shows, Irrational and Found, are very bingey and very fun. So I've given you now 3 excellent options of things to watch. You are taking it easy and getting some downtime.
Fantastic. Cara, thank you so much for doing this. I knew this was going to be a super informative and fun interview, and I appreciate your time. And I'll let you get back to all the calls that are rolling in.
Thank you. So good to do this with you too. You've always been so amazing and so supportive and such an amazing resource. So I love chatting with you about this too.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.